The morning of September 15th, 2023, began just like any other for Martha and Robert Collins in their modest home on Maple Street in Billings, Montana. The couple, now in their mid-60s, had settled into a quiet routine after retiring from their respective careers as a school teacher and a construction foreman. Their lives had been forever altered on June 23, 2011, when their only son, James, vanished without a trace at the age of 17. Martha was tending to her garden, the cool autumn breeze carrying the scent of ripening apples from their old tree. Robert was inside, reading the Billings Gazette with his morning coffee. 12 years had passed since James disappeared, but the pain remained fresh, a constant companion that had etched deep lines into their faces and silvered their hair prematurely. Robert. Martha's voice broke the morning stillness, a tremor of disbelief in her tone. Robert, come quick. Robert rushed outside, his newspaper forgotten on the kitchen table. Martha stood frozen by the garden gate, her gardening gloves covered in soil, her face pale with shock. And there, at her feet, sat an aging chocolate Labrador, its muzzle grayed, eyes clouded with cataracts, but unmistakable nonetheless. Is that Buddy? Robert whispered, his voice catching. Buddy had been James's dog, a gift for his 14th birthday. The dog had disappeared the same day James did, adding another layer of mystery to their son's vanishing. The police had speculated that James had taken Buddy with him, supporting the theory that the teenager had run away rather than met with foul play. Martha knelt slowly, her knees protesting after years of gardening. She reached out with trembling hands to touch the dog's head. It's him, Robert. I know it's him. The dog whined softly, pressing his head against Martha's palm. It was then that Robert noticed something tied to Buddy's worn leather collar, a small, weathered USB drive wrapped in faded blue duct tape. Martha, Robert said, his heart racing, there's something attached to his collar. With shaking fingers, Martha untied the USB drive. The small device seemed impossibly heavy in her palm, weighted with potential answers to questions that had haunted them for 12 years. We need to call Detective Ramirez, Robert said, pulling out his phone. Detective Anna Ramirez had been the lead investigator on James's case, remaining in contact with the Collins family long after the official investigation had gone cold. Within an hour, Detective Ramirez arrived at their home. Now the head of Billings Police Department's Missing Persons Unit, she had never forgotten the Collins case, her first major investigation, and one that had remained unsolved. I can't believe it's really Buddy, she said, examining the aging dog while a veterinarian she'd brought along checked his health. The microchip confirms it's him. He's dehydrated and undernourished, but otherwise in decent shape considering his age. What about this? Martha asked, holding out the USB drive. Detective Ramirez took the drive, examining it carefully. This could be crucial evidence. I'll need to take it to the department's tech team. They'll need to check it for any malware before we can access the contents. But what if it has information about James? Martha asked, reluctant to let go of what might be their first clue in 12 years. I promise I'll call you the moment we know anything, Ramirez assured them. In the meantime, take care of Buddy. He's found his way home after all this time. That's already a miracle. As Ramirez left with the USB drive, Martha and Robert turned their attention to Buddy. The old dog had settled on the living room rug, the same spot where he used to lie with James. Martha brought him water and food, while Robert gently brushed his matted fur. Where have you been, old boy? Robert murmured, and what happened to our son? Buddy looked up at them with his cloudy eyes, as if he understood their questions, but couldn't provide the answers they so desperately needed. As night fell over Billings, the Collins family waited, clinging to a fragile hope that had been reignited by the return of their son's faithful companion. The following morning, Detective Ramirez called early. The tech team has cleared the USB drive, she said, her voice tight with controlled emotion. Mr. and Mrs. Collins, I think you should come down to the station. There's something you need to see. The 15-minute drive to the Billings Police Department felt like an eternity. Martha insisted on bringing Buddy, who seemed reluctant to let them out of his sight. The old dog sat in the back seat, his head resting on the center console between them, as if offering silent support. At the station, they were led to a small conference room where Detective Ramirez waited with a laptop. The drive contains several files, she explained as they sat down. Text documents, photos, and a video message. I've watched it, but I think you should see it yourselves. With a click, the screen came to life, and suddenly, there he was, James Collins, no longer the 17-year-old boy who had disappeared, but a man approaching 30. Martha gasped, clutching Robert's hand as tears immediately filled her eyes. "Mom, Dad," James began, his voice deeper than they remembered but unmistakably their son's. "If you're watching this, then Buddy made it home. I've been training him for months to find his way back to Maple Street if anything ever happened to me." James looked thinner than they remembered, with a short beard and tired eyes that spoke of hardship. Behind him was a sparse room with a window showing pine trees and mountains. "I'm sorry for everything I've put you through," he continued. 12 years ago, I witnessed something I shouldn't have. I was down by the river trail, past the old railroad bridge. I saw 3 men unloading something from a van. I didn't realize what I was seeing until it was too late. It was a drug shipment. One of them saw me and I ran. I took Buddy and just ran. Martha's hand covered her mouth, stifling a sob. Robert's jaw clenched tight. One of the men was someone important in Billings, someone with connections to the police department. I was scared to go to the authorities. I hitchhiked to Bozeman, then made my way to Seattle. I've been living under a different name ever since, Daniel Peterson. The details are all on this drive. James paused, swallowing hard. I've included everything I know about the drug operation, names, dates, locations. I thought it would be over by now, that they would have moved on, but I recently saw one of them in Portland. I think they've found me. The image shook slightly as James leaned closer to the camera. I'm in a cabin near Mount Hood. I've written down the coordinates. If you don't hear from me in the next few days, it means they got to me. Release this information to the FBI, not the local police. I don't know who else might be involved. James's eyes welled with tears. I'm so sorry for leaving like I did. I wanted to contact you, but I was afraid they would hurt you to get to me. Please understand, I thought I was protecting you. I love you both so much. The video ended, leaving the room in silence, broken only by Martha's quiet sobs. Detective Ramirez cleared her throat. The coordinates lead to a remote cabin in the Mount Hood National Forest in Oregon. I've already contacted the FBI's Portland field office. They're sending agents to investigate. We need to go there, Robert said firmly. We need to find our son. The FBI will handle the investigation, Mr. Collins, Ramirez said gently. The best thing you can do right now is stay here. If James is in danger, we don't want to alert anyone by having you show up in Oregon. He's been alive all this time, Martha whispered, staring at the frozen image of her grown son on the screen. All these years, we thought he might be dead, and he's been alive. There's more, Ramirez said, pulling out a folder. The names James provided, we've cross-referenced them with our database. One of them is Raymond Dalton. Robert's head snapped up. The real estate developer? The one who's on the city council. Ramirez nodded grimly. The same. He's been a prominent figure in Billings for years, known for his philanthropy and community involvement. If James's allegations are true, he's also been running a drug operation for over a decade. What happens now? Martha asked, stroking Buddy's head. The old dog had laid his head in her lap, offering comfort as he had done for James during his years in hiding. Now we wait for the FBI, Ramirez answered. They should reach the cabin by nightfall. In the meantime, I'm placing you under protective custody. If Dalton is involved and somehow learns about the USB drive, you could be in danger. As they left the conference room, Martha turned to Buddy. You brave, loyal boy, she whispered. You found your way home to help your master one last time. Buddy wagged his tail slowly, his eyes fixed on her face with a wisdom that seemed to transcend his canine nature. In that moment, Martha felt a connection to her son through this faithful companion who had been with him all these years. That night, in a safe house on the outskirts of Billings, Martha and Robert waited anxiously for news from Oregon, while Buddy kept watch at the window, as if expecting James to appear at any moment. The call came at 3:17 a.m. Martha fumbled for her phone in the dark, her heart pounding as she recognized Detective Ramirez's number. Mrs. Collins? I'm sorry to call so late, but I have news. The FBI reached the cabin. James wasn't there, but there were signs of a struggle. They found blood, not much, but enough to indicate someone was injured. Martha's sharp intake of breath woke Robert, who immediately sat up, switching on the bedside lamp. What is it? What's happened? Martha put the phone on speaker. The FBI is conducting a thorough search of the surrounding area, Ramirez continued. They've also found evidence corroborating James's claims about the drug operation. They've obtained warrants to search properties owned by Raymond Dalton and his associates. And James? Robert asked, his voice hoarse with fear. Any sign of where he might be? Not yet, Ramirez admitted. But they did find something interesting. A map with a location marked near Riverton, Wyoming. It could be nothing, but it's the only lead we have right now. Martha looked down at Buddy, who had climbed onto the bed and was watching her with his attentive eyes. What about the blood? Can they tell if it's James's? They're running tests, but it will take time, Ramirez said. I've spoken with Agent Harmon, who's leading the investigation. He's requested permission to bring you to Portland. They believe you might be able to provide insights they're missing. We'll go, Robert said without hesitation. When do we leave? There's a flight from Billings to Portland at 6:30 a.m. Agent Harmon has arranged for tickets. A car will pick you up in an hour to take you to the airport. Martha glanced at the clock. It was barely enough time to pack, but they had waited 12 years for answers. They could manage with whatever they threw into a suitcase now. What about Buddy? Martha asked, stroking the old dog's head. We can't leave him behind. Agent Harmon says to bring him, Ramirez replied. He thinks the dog might be able to help them track James if they get close enough. After a hurried preparation, they were escorted to Billings Logan International Airport, where an FBI agent met them at a private entrance, bypassing the main terminal. Buddy, who would normally have had to travel in the cargo hold, was allowed to stay with them thanks to a hastily arranged service animal designation. The flight to Portland was tense, with Martha and Robert barely speaking, each lost in their own thoughts and fears. Buddy sat at their feet, occasionally lifting his head to look out the window at the clouds below. At Portland International Airport, they were met by Agent Harmon, a tall, serious man with prematurely gray hair and kind eyes. Mr. and Mrs. Collins, I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. We've set up a command center near the cabin. I'll take you there directly. The drive through Portland gave way to dense forest as they headed toward Mount Hood. Martha watched the towering trees pass by, wondering if James had found solace in this wilderness during his years in hiding. We've been piecing together your son's life for the past 12 years, Agent Harmon explained as they drove. He worked odd jobs in Seattle for a while, then moved to Portland about 7 years ago. He got his GED, then took online courses in computer programming. He's been working freelance, keeping a low profile, but by all accounts, he's built a decent life for himself. Did he have friends? Anyone special? Martha asked hesitantly. Harmon nodded. We've identified a woman named Elena Reyes. They appear to have been in a relationship for the past 3 years. She's a veterinarian, which explains how Buddy has been so well cared for despite his age. Have you spoken to her? Robert asked. We've been trying to locate her. She hasn't been to work for the past week. Her apartment shows no signs of forced entry, but neighbors say they haven't seen her in days. Martha's heart sank. They have her too, don't they? Harmon's silence was answer enough. At the command center, a repurposed ranger station near the base of Mount Hood, they were shown to a small room with a map spread across a table. This is where we found the blood, Harmon said, pointing to a spot marked on the map. And this is the location marked on the map we found in the cabin, a small town called Riverton in Wyoming. What's in Riverton? Robert asked. We're not sure yet, Harmon admitted, but it's the only lead we have. We've sent agents there to investigate. Martha studied the map, her teacher's mind automatically calculating distances. It's about a 10-hour drive from here to Riverton. If James left the cabin before the FBI arrived, and if he's headed there, he'd still be on the road, Harmon finished. We've alerted state police in Oregon, Idaho, and Wyoming to be on the lookout for him, but without knowing what vehicle he might be driving, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. Buddy, who had been lying quietly at Martha's feet, suddenly stood up, his ears perking forward. He walked to the map, sniffing at the corner, then began to paw at a particular spot, a small town called Baker City, just across the Oregon-Idaho border. What is it, boy? Martha asked, bending down to look at where Buddy was indicating. Harmon frowned, leaning closer. Baker City, there's a Dalton Industries warehouse there. It wasn't on our radar because it's registered under a subsidiary company, but if your dog is onto something. He quickly made a call, dispatching agents to Baker City. It'll take them at least 2 hours to get there from Portland, he explained after hanging up. And we can't be sure what Buddy is trying to tell us. I know my son's dog, Martha said firmly. He's trying to help us find James. As they waited for news, Martha and Robert were shown to a small room where they could rest. Buddy refused to leave their side, maintaining his vigil even as exhaustion began to take its toll on the elderly couple. He'll be okay, Robert whispered, holding Martha's hand as they sat side by side on a narrow cot. Our boy survived 12 years on his own. He's smart and resourceful. I just want to hold him again, Martha said, tears slipping down her cheeks. I want to tell him we never stopped looking, never stopped hoping. Outside their room, they could hear the command center buzzing with activity as the FBI coordinated their search. Somewhere out there, their son was in danger, and all they could do was wait and pray that Buddy's mysterious return had come in time to save him. The call came shortly after midnight. Agent Harmon knocked on their door, his face tight with urgency. We've got something. The team in Baker City found a witness who saw two men forcing a man and woman into a van early this morning. The description matches James and Elena. Where are they now? Robert demanded, immediately on his feet despite having barely slept. The witness got a partial plate number. Oregon State Police found the van abandoned at a rest stop near the Idaho border. There was blood inside, but not a lot. And they found this. Harmon held up an evidence bag containing a small charm. A tarnished silver compass rose on a broken chain. Martha gasped, reaching for it instinctively before stopping herself. I gave that to James on his 16th birthday. He never took it off. We think he left it deliberately, as a breadcrumb, Harmon said. The rest stop has security cameras. They caught footage of 3 men transferring James and Elena to another vehicle, a black SUV registered to a shell company we've linked to Dalton Industries. And the direction they were heading. Robert asked. East. Toward Wyoming. Toward Riverton. Harmon paused. We need to move quickly. I have a helicopter standing by to take us to Riverton. I've been authorized to bring you along, but I need you to understand, this is potentially very dangerous. We're coming, Martha said firmly, already gathering her few belongings. Buddy too. The helicopter ride was tense and uncomfortable, the roar of the rotors making conversation impossible. Martha held Buddy close, drawing comfort from his solid presence as they flew through the night toward Wyoming. They landed at a small airfield outside Riverton just as dawn was breaking. A team of FBI agents met them, quickly briefing Harmon on what they had discovered. There's a hunting lodge about 20 miles north of here, Harmon explained as they climbed into waiting SUVs. It's owned by another shell company connected to Dalton. Surveillance shows activity there in the last 24 hours, vehicles coming and going, men with weapons. And you think that's where they've taken James? Martha asked, her voice steady despite her fear. It's our best guess, Harmon admitted. We're setting up a perimeter around the property. Once we confirm James and Elena are inside, we'll move in. The FBI set up their command post in a clearing about a mile from the lodge. Through binoculars, they could see the rustic building nestled among pine trees, smoke rising from a chimney despite the warm September weather. Thermal imaging shows at least 7 people inside, one of the agents reported. 2 of them are in what appears to be a basement area, not moving much. The others are scattered throughout the main floor. Hostages, Robert murmured, his fists clenching at his sides. Martha watched as the FBI team prepared for their assault, checking weapons and donning tactical gear. It seemed surreal. After 12 years of wondering, praying, and grieving, they were finally close to finding their son. Buddy, who had been lying quietly beside Martha, suddenly stood up, his hackles raising. A low growl rumbled in his throat as he stared intently at the trees to their right. Agent Harmon, Martha called softly, pointing to Buddy's behavior. Harmon frowned, signaling to his team. 2 agents moved cautiously toward the trilene, weapons drawn. Suddenly, a figure burst from the underbrush, a man in his early 30s, face scratched and bloodied, clothes torn. He stumbled forward a few steps before collapsing to his knees. James! Martha cried, recognizing her son despite the years and the changes. She rushed forward, Robert close behind her. The FBI agents moved quickly to secure the area, ensuring the man wasn't being pursued. Buddy bounded forward, reaching James first, whining and licking his face as the man wrapped his arms around the dog's neck. Buddy, he whispered hoarsely. You found them. Good boy. Martha and Robert fell to their knees beside their son, enveloping him in a desperate embrace. For a moment, time seemed to stand still as the family reunited after 12 long years. Elena, James gasped, pulling back to look at Agent Harmon. They still have Elena. We were being held in the basement. I managed to get out through a window, but it was too small for her to follow. They'll know I'm gone by now. Harmon nodded grimly, immediately radioing his team. We need to move now. Confirmation of 1 hostage still inside. Collins managed to escape, but reports the woman is still being held. The FBI's assault on the lodge was swift and precise. From their position in the command post, Martha, Robert, and James watched as the tactical team stormed the building. There were shouts, the sound of flashbang grenades, and then, after what seemed like an eternity, Harmon's voice over the radio. Building secure. Hostage recovered. Suspects in custody. James sagged with relief, closing his eyes briefly as tears streamed down his face. Thank God. As medical personnel tended to James's injuries, mostly cuts and bruises from his escape through the forest, he explained what had happened. I was planning to come home, he said, his voice stronger now that he'd had water and food. After all these years, I finally had enough evidence against Dalton and his operation. I'd been gathering it slowly, carefully. When I realized they'd found me, I sent Buddy to you with the USB drive. I trained him for months, just in case. I knew if anyone could find his way home, it would be him. But how did they find you after all this time? Robert asked, still holding tightly to his son's hand, as if afraid he might disappear again. Bad luck, James said wryly. Elena and I were in Portland for a veterinary conference. We stopped for coffee at a place downtown, and I saw one of Dalton's men, a guy named Miller who I recognized from that night 12 years ago. He saw me too. We ran, but they caught up with us at the cabin. And Riverton? Martha asked. What's here? Evidence, James explained. I've been tracking their operation for years. They use this lodge for meetings, planning. There are records here, files, computer drives. I overheard them talking about cleaning everything out, destroying evidence. That's why they brought us here. They needed to know what I knew, who I'd told.